In 2016, 57,000 Minnesotans were unable to vote due to a felony conviction. This statistic is from Miranda Jansen, an attorney with a law degree from Hamline University, found in her honors thesis for Hamline's College of Liberal Arts, published in 2019. Everyone in this room is old enough to vote or will be soon, and voting is a fundamental right in our American democracy. The state legislature in Minnesota should restore voting rights to felons in prison and on parole. First, I will introduce some problems with felony disenfranchisement, and then I will propose a possible solution. So first, let's start with the issues. Currently, felons cannot vote in Minnesota until the completion of their entire sentence. This includes probation and parole. This is an issue here because Minnesota favors excessive probation time over incarceration time. According to Janessa Rudell, a social worker with a master's degree from Minnesota State University in Mankato, states in the university's College of Allied Health and Nursing Journal, published in 2019, that Minnesota ranks the 4th highest when it comes to probation length, with excessive probation lasting up to 30 or 40 years. Most of these people live in our communities. In fact, out of the 57,000 people I mentioned earlier, 47,000 are living, working, and paying taxes in our communities, and therefore, they deserve the right to vote. There are a few constitutional issues when it comes to disenfranchisement. On the federal level, we are protected from cruel and unusual punishments. The definition of cruel and unusual has changed over the years, and many people believe that disenfranchisement fits the definition of cruel and unusual. The second issue is that the 15th Amendment protects the right to vote. However, there is a loophole in the 14th Amendment that is often used to take away voting rights. But we should interpret the 15th Amendment as more powerful than a loophole in the 14th, and therefore everyone should be able to vote. And finally, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 protects from discriminatory voting practices. However, disenfranchisement is inherently discriminatory. Jeanette Lindo, a child support officer with a master's from Concordia University in St. Paul, argued in her thesis for a master's in criminal justice leadership, published in 2021, that felony disenfranchisement law is race neutral on the surface. However, the United States has a criminal justice system that has been historically tied to race. These arguments on the federal level can be extended to the state level in Minnesota. And in addition to these arguments, the Minnesota State Bill of Rights has 3 key protections that should allow all Minnesotans to vote. The first being that Minnesotans are allowed to modify and reform their government, in this case through voting. Second, no Minnesotan can be deprived of their political rights. And finally, we are protected from cruel and unusual punishment on the state level as we are on the federal level. If Minnesota uses these arguments, there's a good chance that we can restore voting rights to felons. The current system we have favors disenfranchisement and makes it difficult for ex-felons to vote. One issue is that restoring voting rights is not in the interest of most politicians. According to Marat Mungan, a professor of law at Florida State University, observed in a public choice journal published in 2017, that law enforcers propose sentences that maximize their chance of re-election. By removing felons from voting pools, politicians can ignore issues that impact the incarcerated, and this increases the average prison sentence and promotes disenfranchisement. Another issue is the pardon system. People who are in prison or on parole can apply for a pardon, and if granted, they would regain the right to vote. However, receiving a pardon is rare. Lindsay Turner, an attorney with a law degree from St. Thomas University, states in Minnesota Second Chance's Legislative Priority Section, published in 2021, that in 2017, 110,000 Minnesotans were in prison or on parole. And out of this number, 84 applied for pardons, but only 13 were granted. So clearly it is difficult to receive a pardon or even apply for one in the first place. And the final issue is that felons are often purged from voter rolls. This happens to felons more often because law enforcers are trying to keep voter rolls clean, and since felons cannot vote, they are often purged. The issue with this is that they are not told when they are removed, and they are not informed on how to re-register to vote. So if we restore voting rights to felons, these are some logistical issues we would need to tackle. Now that I have introduced you to the problems with felony disenfranchisement, I will propose a possible solution. The state legislature in Minnesota has the power to amend the Minnesota Constitution, and they should propose a joint amendment restoring voting rights to felons. Since statehood, Minnesota has passed 120 of these 213 proposed amendments. This number is from Matt Gehring, a legislative analyst in Minnesota's House Research Department, stated in a House Research Journal published in 2016. Once this amendment is introduced, it would need to get a majority vote in both the House and the Senate. And once it receives this vote, it can be directly put on the next election ballot. It does not need to go past the governor since it is a joint style amendment. Then, once it is on the election ballot, it needs to receive a majority vote of all votes cast in the election. This means that if someone leaves the question blank, it counts as a no vote. If it were to receive a majority vote, the Minnesota Constitution would be amended and felons would regain the right to vote. After restoration, people who were in prison or on parole would need to be informed of this. The first issue is that they should be notified when they are purged. So the Department of Corrections and Probation and Parole would oversee this, and they would let people know when they were removed from voter rolls, and they would tell them how to re-register. Second, voting needs to be accessible for people in prison. They should be able to request an absentee ballot, or if the prison has the facilities, set up a polling place for people who are in the prison. And finally, politicians should be able to send voting information to people in prison, so they can be informed when they exercise their newly restored right to vote. First, I talked about the issues with felony disenfranchisement, and then I proposed a possible solution. The state legislature in Minnesota should restore voting rights to felons in prison and on parole. It is critical that we restore these voting rights so the voices of over 57,000 Minnesotans can be heard.
6:25, excellent